Hello and welcome to this video. In this video, I am going to be reading sci-fi books for the first time. Typically, I stick to fantasy or any kind of book that has magic in it. That is my comfort genre. But this series is all about reading outside of my comfort zone. So in this video, I'm going to be reading 3 different sci-fi books to see if I like it. What inspired me to pick sci-fi is, number one, I put a poll on my YouTube community page, and that's what the most people voted for. Number 2, I have gotten back into watching Doctor Who this year. The new series on Disney Plus with Ncuti Gatwa I loved it, and so I figured, you know what, let's see if I like sci-fi. Like I said before, I'm typically reading fantasy. I feel like there's some overlap between fantasy and sci-fi in that both fantasy and sci-fi often take place in other worlds where the possibilities are different. And so there are some amazing things that can happen in both fantasy and sci-fi books. So I'm hoping that I enjoy these books. The books that I am reading in this vlog are, number 1, Dune, because it is a classic in the sci-fi genre. Number 2, The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. This book is on the list because 2 of my favorite books that I have read this year are by Becky Chambers, so I wanted to read more of her books. And the 3rd book is Project Hail Mary, which, according to this video, one of the favorite books here on BookTube in the year 2022. So those are the books that I will be reading in this vlog. Let's see if I like them. Hello. Here's my first update of this sci-fi reading vlog. I am currently in the middle of 2 sci-fi books. The first one is Dune. I am listening to the audiobook. I'm 13% of the way into the book right now, so I still have a long ways to go, but I have gotten a little bit of the setup. And basically, what I can tell, our main character is a teenage boy. His father is the Duke. The Duke has been sent by like the king or the Galactic Emperor or something like that to go, like, he's stationed the Duke on this other planet. So they've just traveled to this new planet, and there's a war going on. And I think also with the war that's happening and all the politics involved, it is feeling very epic fantasy to me. But the second book that I am reading, that I'm in the middle of right now, does take place on a spaceship, and that is The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers, because Becky Chambers wrote 2 of my favorite reads that I've read so far this year. The Monk and the Robot duology. And so since I had such a good time with that, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna read this. It takes place on a spaceship, like I said. We're being introduced to the crew, and we're kind of bouncing around from one perspective to another. I think that's just, I'm not sure if that's gonna continue throughout the whole book, or if that's just a way of introducing us to everybody. Yeah, as we've been bouncing around, one of the people that we keep coming back to is a girl named Rosemary, and she's just been hired. She's just come aboard this spaceship. Since I just got a new job myself, that feels very relatable, and like meeting all these new people and like just feeling very like welcomed and all that, and starting a new job and being nervous about it and all that, very relatable yet again. Becky Chambers is just, she knows what I'm going through this year. Okay, here's a little halfway update for The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. I'm really liking this one. It is very cozy. I love that. I also love that this one has some little sprinkling of like philosophical, ethical conversations about feelings and humanity and all that. Similar to the conversations that are in the Monk and the Robot duology, it's just this has less of that than the Monk and the Robot duology. Feelings are relative, and at the root, they're all the same, even if they grow from different experiences and exist on different scales. So that was just a moment in this book that I don't know, just an example of those things that like get you to think about, like how, just get you think. And I like that. So I'm halfway through Dune. We're getting into the meat of the story at this point. And there are like things that are like certain details and things that are happening where I'm like, can tell it's important, but I'm like, did I miss something? Maybe I missed something because like this doesn't completely make sense to me. I don't know, but yeah, I'm definitely liking this one more. It's not exactly convincing me to continue reading sci-fi. Let's just say that. I'm still on the fence about sci-fi. Okay, hello. Reading update. I started a new book last night, and that is Project Hail Mary. What influenced me to pick up this book before I finish this one is that this one, along with my Dune audiobook, are both due back at the library this weekend. It is Thursday, so I've got quite a lot to read before Saturday night. So yeah, that's the update. It's been 3 weeks. I haven't started, I've had this sitting on my shelf for 3 weeks and I haven't started it because I've been reading this one, right? This one I was able to renew, so I have it for a few more weeks. That's beside the point. What was I trying to say? Oh, I've been reading this for 3 weeks, right? I've been reading this for 3 weeks and I am 60% of the way through the book. And so I'm kind of like asking myself, has this challenge been successful? Because normally, like, here's the thing, something that I do, I think does factor in to like how I feel about books, how I like books or whatever, is like how fast I'm able to read the books, whether I want to put them, like I want to pick them back up, I feel like I can't put them down, that kind of a thing. And Dune and this one, it's not one of those things where I'm like, ooh, I have to keep reading, you know? Neither one of those are doing it for me. So yeah, let's talk about this one. I started it last night because it is due at the library in 2 days. And so far this one is doing it. This may be the one to convince me to like sci-fi, because this, like, it's a little bit of a mystery. This man wakes up on a spaceship all alone with 2 dead bodies, and he's like, where am I? How'd I get here? Why are there 2 dead bodies right next to me? What's happening? And so he's like trying to figure out how he got there and what's going on. And so you add a question like that, you add a little bit of mystery to something like that, I'm gonna eat it up. I can't put it down. I need to know what's going on. And like, this feels more sci-fi than Dune to me because it is set on a spaceship in space. And like I just expect sci-fi to have more to do with space, I guess, than Dune actually has to do with space. Does that make sense? This is more of what I expected. Crew of this spaceship that we are following is made up of humans and aliens, and so we've got that element to it. It's on a spaceship, they're traveling through space, and so like this feels more sci-fi, but it doesn't have like the intensity that I also associate with sci-fi, of like trying to save the world, trying to save something, but like these high stakes. Like this has very low stakes, so like in that way it doesn't quite meet my expectations, but it does have the aliens, which I appreciate. And I do like the slow stakes of this, the coziness of this, but because it is slower paced, I'm reading it slower because I don't need to pick it up. I don't feel the need to pick it up. But this one, like I said, it's got higher stakes. There's a mystery to it, and I'm really excited to keep reading this one because this is what I was expecting. Here's a reading update. Ever since I last spoke to you, I've been reading like crazy because obviously I want to finish this. And yeah, I've been reading like crazy. I've also been listening to Dune a lot. Right now I have about 100 pages left in here, and I thought I'd give you a little update on like my thoughts on this so far. This definitely has the fast, or maybe not fast paced, but the like life and death, have to save the world stakes that I associate with sci-fi. This has that. As there are really high stakes, like it keeps me engaged. So that's good, that's great. Something I also wanted to mention is that this has like first person narration, which is like very casual, very easy to follow, very accessible. Like I like that. And something else that this plays the movie, like I feel like this was written to be a movie, and so it lends itself really well to the whole like imagining what's happening. So it's easy to like follow along in my head, in my imagination, what's happening, because I feel like this was written to be a movie. A few things that I'm not a huge fan of is I feel like there's a lot of sciencey mumbo jumbo. Like there will be several pages at a time where it's like explaining like, oh, here's the science behind this. And like on the one hand, I'm like, I get it, it's science fiction. You're gonna have some of that. It doesn't need to be as long as it is. I don't think the explanations need to be as detailed as they are. My eyes glaze over a lot when it comes to these like sciencey explanations because I I'm like, this isn't actually real, and also it's too much. Like, I don't want to spoil it. I don't want to spoil it. I'm trying to get better about like not just regurgitating what's happening in the book when I give these updates. So there's this part in the synopsis here. It's here, right here in the synopsis, and it says, and with the clock clicking down, he's got to save the world all on his own. Or does he? Or does he? I like that. We'll just say I like that. I just finished Project Hail Mary. Let's talk about it real quick. Okay, before getting into spoiler territory, here are 2 last general takeaways from the book. I think it was a little too long. I kind of talked about this a little bit yesterday, but there's a lot of like science-y explanations that I feel like didn't need to be as long as they were, and I think that's where some of these pages could have been cut from that. So that's that. What else? I just watched this video by Allison Pages in which Allie reads Project Hail Mary, and I have to agree with what she says about this being very, I don't know, just what she said here.
I think this could have gotten way more philosophical. I thought we had some great opportunities to dig deeper and be less objective, less number, science, nitrogen, oxygen, equation-y, right brain. You know what I mean?
Google, show me this guy's balls, please.
Could have sprinkled some left brain in there, in my opinion. I would have loved that.
I agree with what she said. I agree with that 100%. So those are my general non-spoilery thoughts. Now, I have stuff to say regarding some spoilers. So here's your spoiler warning. I'm really glad that Ryland meets a friend out in space. That was fun. I really liked Rocky, and I love like their friendship. I love them. I love Rocky. I love their friendship. When Rocky almost dies at that one point when he's trying to save Ryland, that got me. And then again, when like they part ways and then things go south and Ryland has to go save Rocky, I love a good rescue. Rocky's reaction to being rescued, I love it. My heart was happy about that. So yeah, there was no way I wasn't going to talk about that spoiler in discussing my thoughts and feelings about this book. I had to, but I also didn't want to spoil it. So hopefully, if you didn't want spoilers, you didn't hear any of this. And that's where I'm at with Project Hail Mary. We're going to talk about Dune because I've finished it and I have thoughts. First of all, I totally get why so many people love this. I get that. I respect that. I admire people who love this. It was not for me. But like I said, I get why people do, because it is very interesting, just like how complex and how political, and there's like a lot of betrayal, there's like a lot of politics in this book, and like who is working with who to get who on top. There's so much going on. And so if you're really into books with that kind of political intrigue, I think you'll really like this. That also kind of helped Dune kind of stand out from other books that were coming out and other sci-fi stories that were being produced at the time that it was first published. I get why it is what it is, why it is so popular, why it is so beloved. I even like some of the stuff with the politics, particularly there was some things with like certain like religious orders and how that like religion isn't always like this good moral thing. Like even religious organizations can be bad and manipulative and like power hungry. Like that was interesting to me. And so like there are things like that I found interesting and found good. Another thing that I just felt kind of uncomfortable with throughout the book is the whole voice thing, that Paul has been trained his whole life to basically manipulate people and know exactly how to manipulate people, because like that like he can see how other people are feeling based on like, you know, their breathing or their heart rate or whatever, and know if they're like stressed out, and then he uses that to like change the way he like speaks to them so that he can get them to do what he wants them to do and stuff like that. Like just the fact that that is a thing, that makes me uncomfortable. Like I don't, and like he's our main character, and like the way I went into this book is thinking, you know, he's the main character, he's the hero, he's the good guy, I'm supposed to be rooting for him, but then there's this piece of him that's like very manipulative, right? That made me really uncomfortable. But then I saw this short that's basically saying like there are no good guys or bad guys in Dune, and then I was like, okay, at least I'm validated in not trusting Paul. Talking with my coworkers about Dune yesterday when I finished it. I was like, hey, in Slack, I was like, hey, has anybody read Dune? What did you think of it? I want to talk about it. And the, there were two main takeaways. One, no, I haven't read it, but I love the movies. And two, I tried to read it, hated the book, but loved the movies. I didn't hate the book. I didn't dislike the book. I just kind of like, I feel kind of neutrally about it. And that's all I have to say about Dune. I'm back to reading this, and I have to say, after reading Dune and Project Hail Mary, this is a big shift, and I am loving it because those two are clearly written by men. It just feels very like emotions are bad, you know, like it just feels, I get that feeling from both of those books. That's just how I felt. This feels like it was written by a woman. We're more like emotionally attuned, like in tune with our characters and understanding that like, that's okay. People and aliens all have emotions, and that's a part of life. And so it's actually kind of nice and refreshing getting back to reading this after finishing both of those and just knowing that it's okay to feel things. Let's talk about the Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. I finished this over the weekend. Again, I want to repeat what I said in the last clip. I loved reading this. After reading Dune and Project Hail Mary, I love we all have flaws, but we're all trying our best, right? And that kind of a feel, I liked that this focused more on that. Getting back into this, it felt like a TV show. It felt like a comfort TV show. It really did. Like each chapter, like this show is set on a spaceship in space, and you're just along for the ride. You're just watching the crew and what the shenanigans they get up to. And each chapter is just like a different little vignette into these crew members' lives. And each chapter kind of focuses on a different group of like crew members. Once I kind of realized that, I was like, oh, this is like a show. It's like a cartoon. It's like coziness of it. And it's not like one of these like dramatic shows where there's this like season-long arc of like, oh, like there are little hints and things sprinkled throughout each episode. There wasn't anything like that, and I'm okay with that. I also mentioned this before, but Becky Chambers, like she just weaves in these little philosophical, like human, just like these little things. Like another quote that hit me so hard. I know I mentioned before, this is very cozy. In the end, it does, like the last few chapters are quite intense. There is a very climactic climax that I would not categorize as cozy. It is intense. Some of these characters are struggling with the aftermath of that, with like just the trauma and just the grief that like this really difficult experience has left them with. And a different character is observing these characters that are having a particularly hard time with this afterwards. And this character is talking to another character that also doesn't really feel that isn't struggling as much. And he says, I don't pretend to understand. Frankly, I find the whole notion absurd. But you know what I realized? It doesn't matter what I think. Jenks, who's the one that's struggling a lot, thinks something different, and his pain is very real right now. Me knowing how stupid this whole thing is doesn't make him hurt any less. And so it's just about like realizing that even though somebody's going through something and we don't understand it, just because we don't understand it doesn't mean that they aren't hurting. And I loved that. There are like moments like that just sprinkled throughout this book. That is why I loved the Monk and the Robot duology, which I read earlier this year. That's also by Becky Chambers. I loved that. Those are my final thoughts on The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. Now let's wrap up this vlog. Okay. Vlog over. I've now read 3 sci-fi books. Do I like sci-fi? I don't know. I loved this one. I think I'm definitely going to continue this series. This is a whole series. I think there are 4 of these books in this series, so I'm definitely going to keep reading those. And I love this. I love this flavor of sci-fi for all the reasons that you just heard. As far as Dune and Project Hail Mary goes, Dune, if I continue with Dune at all, it will be via movie. Project Hail Mary and Andy Weir, honestly, same thing. The way Project Hail Mary was written, I could tell that it was written to become a movie one day. And that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing. It made it very easy to imagine what was going on, to picture what was happening in the book. So I appreciate that. But at the same time, I feel like the story could have been edited down. I think it was a little bit long. Yeah, so I'm still kind of on the fence when it comes to sci-fi books. If you want to convince me, if you love sci-fi and you want to help convince me to love sci-fi as well, tell me what your favorite sci-fi books are down in the comments below, and I will read them at some point. I think that's all. I think that is all I have to say right now. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for listening to me ramble about books. I will see you in my next video. Bye.